In the 1980s, author Shepard Bliss coined the phrase toxic masculinity. Perhaps unsurprisingly, this phrase has often sparked debates and even fights, with many people claiming that it implies masculinity itself is toxic and that it's a sexist phrase because no one talks about toxic femininity.
Dismissing and even demonizing the contributions of men throughout our history has become oh so inspiring.
Toxic masculinity, the term of endearment embraced by dismal teachers' lounges everywhere to smear an entire gender.
It's linked to the idea that there's something wrong with masculinity.
And I'm here to tell you that neither of those statements are true. And honestly, they are almost a completely disingenuous interpretation of what toxic masculinity means and how it affects everyone, not just men. Toxic masculinity, as a phrase, does not mean that men are toxic. Rather, it's meant to convey the existence of gender norms perpetuated against men that are harmful for everyone, though especially for men. Also, toxic femininity is an existing phrase, albeit less easy to say, that is similar to toxic masculinity, except the gender norms are perpetuated against women, though they are still harmful to everyone. Neither of these phrases are intended to attack any specific gender, and hell, you don't even have to be of that gender in order to perpetuate them. Men can exhibit traits of toxic femininity just like women can exhibit traits of toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity can also take many different forms, which were heavily explored in books like The Masks of Masculinity by Lewis Howes, which I will be using in this video discussion about the toxic masculinity in the movie Midsommar. Midsommar, a 2018 horror film directed and written by Ari Aster, tells the story of a woman named Dani. After tragically losing her parents and sister to a murder-suicide, Dani decides to join her toxic boyfriend Christian and his friends as they travel to Sweden to study Swedish midsummer festivals for their anthropology theses. While at a Swedish commune, Dani and Christian's group is slowly picked off one by the commune as a part of a midsummer ritual. This is actually depicted in one of the best examples of foreshadowing I have ever seen in a modern film, by the way. The film ends with Dani succumbing to the ways of the cult, and while watching her boyfriend be sacrificed in a fire to appease the gods of the cult, Dani smiles her first true smile since the death of her family. Gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss. And if you don't get that, like my script editor didn't, it's a meme. Look it up. Ari Aster has stated that he wrote Midsommar to describe the feelings of a particularly toxic breakup that he went through, and honestly, relatable. Who hasn't wanted to watch their ex be burned in a bear suit while you choke on the smoke from the flames? Just me? Seriously? Okay, fine, whatever. Despite that very relatable and slightly concerning theme, I think that Midsommar is also a great representation of toxic masculinity, particularly the different forms it takes on via the masks of masculinity. Now, before we break it all down, let's lay some groundwork. People don't perpetuate toxic masculinity on purpose. No one wakes up every day and thinks, how can I be the most toxic person in the world? Well, okay, maybe Andrew Tate thinks that.
If you're the kind of person who feels like they need therapy, you're useless.
Never say go into bed. Go into bed is emasculate. Cowards need sleep.
But no sane, normal person does. Toxic masculinity is a result of societal expectations and psychological shields that people build over time to protect the ego, which is the part of us where our self-worth is framed. Naturally, it's also the most fragile part of our psyche. Just one bruise to our ego, and that thing can fall apart quicker than a taco on Taco Tuesday. Is that a phrase? I'm pretty sure that's a phrase. Anyway, when people perpetuate toxic masculinity, it's not just because they're toxic assholes who should be yoked into the sun.
Nice try, puppy!
Especially because we all wear the masks and perpetuate toxic masculinity from time to time. You want to yeet all of us into the sun? Do it. Put me out of my misery. But actually, please don't. My script editor is trying to save up for another snake, and she can't do that if we've all been yeeted into the sun. The bottom line is this. Everyone perpetuates toxic masculinity at some point, so if you're called out on it, it's not an attack on who you are as a person. It's just about acknowledging something that you're doing that can cause long-term harm to your mental health and the mental health of the people around you. It's no different than saying, hey, it's totally cool if you drink occasionally, but maybe don't get blackout drunk every week because that is super bad for you. Now, with that said, let's go character by character and discuss the masks of masculinity. Mark is probably the most obvious out of all the people perpetuating toxic masculinity throughout Midsommar. When we think of toxic masculinity, there are two masks that most often come to mind: the aggressive mask and the sexual mask. Mark is definitely the latter. Basically every single thing that comes out of Mark's mouth is about sex.
You could be getting that girl pregnant right now.
Oh my God, the women here.
What is it that makes them hotter?
What do you do when you need to jerk off? Especially with all these dicks on the wall. It's fun.
Who's having sex? Who's not having sex? And where can he get sex? In fact, one of the main reasons that Mark thinks Christian should leave Danny in the beginning of the film is because Danny doesn't like sex.
And then you can find a chick who actually likes sex.
Mark doesn't acknowledge the blatantly obvious fact that Christian isn't really that into Danny anymore. Mark just wants Christian to find another girl who actually likes sex. Alternatively, Mark would also just be happy with Christian being single and
Getting that girl pregnant right now.
And this is because Mark doesn't value women as full people. He only sees them as holes in which him and his friends can insert themselves. This idea is so detrimental to him that it actually affects his physical safety. Even knowing that the commune has it out for him after he accidentally peed on their ancestral tree, Mark willingly separates from the group and goes with a random woman when she asks him to come with her, because he assumes that she wants sex.
I'll be back, I guess. She's gonna show me.
And this is beside the point, but Mark peed on their special tree and he didn't even apologize for it. He's a jerk. A toxic, sexual jerk. Josh may seem like your typical college nerd boy, and at first glance he doesn't seem to have the mark of what most people commonly associate with toxic masculinity. He's not violent in any sort of way, and though he doesn't seem to express much emotion, that's more because his character doesn't have an emotional arc in the film. Josh wears a lesser-known mask of toxic masculinity, the know-it-all mask.
That most of what Ted says is correcting you. Hey, can you hand me a Kleenex?
Actually, Kleenex is a brand. This is a facial tissue.
This mask is the mask of masculinity that tells you your self-worth is tied into your knowledge and intellect. Admitting that you're wrong about something or that someone else knows more would be the same as admitting that you are intellectually weaker than someone else. And Josh can't do that, even while discussing Sweden with Swedish people who have actual lived experience in Sweden.
Wow, I think the Saki Saints do the same thing in Brajbumi.
So, we are your hosts?
Hi, Editor Ricky here. I forgot to mention that Josh also withholds information from Danny, knowing that what they are about to see, the Alta Stupa, is actually going to be extremely triggering for her given her recent trauma.
Do you know what it is? Dude.
Is it scary?
This is an example of how toxic masculinity can be harmful for not just those of us perpetuating it, but those of us around it. If Josh had shared this knowledge with Danny, she might not have been so triggered the next day. Not only can someone wearing the know-it-all mask not admit when they're wrong, but part of the reason they fight so hard to maintain their know-it-all status is because being proven wrong can cause them actual pain. But being wrong is also the first step of being kind of right about something. So let's admit when we're wrong, and when we can, give others grace for doing the same. Because if you're like Josh, your fight for intellectual superiority may lead you into, going to an off-limits library and dying because of it. So let's not do that. While it may be difficult to see at first, Pele perpetuates toxic masculinity by wearing the Joker mask. The Joker mask is what allows us to disassociate from our feelings or trauma by presenting him in a way that is funny, thereby separating ourselves from the awfulness. Multiple times throughout the film, Pele presents legitimately traumatizing situations in a humorous manner, like when he makes jokes about Christian impregnating Swedish women.
Don't forget about all the Swedish women you can impregnate in June.
Okay, guys.
Or about the people in his community offing themselves at 74.
What happens at 72?
Even though that's exactly literally what they do. Also, considering he knows that Danny just lost all of her family to a tragic murder-suicide, he should show her some courtesy by being honest with what is about to happen, or at least by providing a trigger warning for his jokes. This is an example of the ways in which wearing the masks of masculinity can be harmful not just to ourselves, but to those around us. Instead of being honest with his severely traumatized friend regarding the cultural phenomenon she's about to witness, he presents it as a joke, causing Danny further harm. For that, Pele is a jerk. I mean, he's also a jerk for luring his friends to the commune so that they can be ritualistically sacrificed, but that honestly goes without saying. And now we get to Christian. Yay. For the most part, he seems like a standard man, and as some men who have watched the movie would say, he's not that bad.
I'm in danger!
Except Christian is that bad because I hate him! No, but in all seriousness, when it comes to toxic masculinity, Christian actually displays one of the most frustrating masks, the stoic mask. The stoic mask, or the hero mask, is the mask of masculinity that says that you have to be silent and stoic, the hero of your own story, like Mad Max in Fury Road. People wearing the stoic mask may feel as though they can't express their emotions unless those emotions are justified, such as extreme sadness resulting from a loss or extreme anger at someone who has wronged you. While neither of these things happen to Christian throughout Midsommar, it's very clear through dialogue and interactions between him and Danny that Christian is indeed wearing the stoic mask. In the very beginning of the film, Danny laments to her friend that in the 4 years she and Christian have been together, he's never needed her for support.
Yeah, but he doesn't ask me for anything. I've never even seen him cry, so I'm the only one that's leaning.
And that's not normal. Then, when Danny's parents and sister die in the murder-suicide, Christian comforts Danny while she understandably bawls her eyes out, and he still shows no emotion. He's known Danny's family for 4 years. They're now gone forever, and he shows zero emotion about it? Again, not normal. And more importantly, that's not healthy for him or the people in his life. What makes Christian's stoic attitude worse is that it continues to gaslight Danny into thinking that she's the problem in their relationship.
What if I have overwhelmed him and he thinks that I just have too much baggage?
When in actuality, she's just relying on her partner the way that any romantic partner should. Now, don't get me wrong, there is such a thing as compassion fatigue, where you get exhausted and overwhelmed by being someone's support system for long periods of time. That's a normal thing that can happen to anyone, and it is not a part of toxic masculinity. If you ever find yourself with compassion fatigue, the best thing you can do in that situation is be emotionally vulnerable with the person and actually say out loud, "Hey, I'm emotionally exhausted from being a support system. I need support too, and I don't know how to ask for it." It may be an uncomfortable situation to have, but it's important to acknowledge when you're trying to build healthy relationships in your life. But when you've been in a relationship for 4 years with someone and you've never cried in front of them or relied on them for genuine, true emotional support, you may want to ask yourself if you're wearing the stoic mask of masculinity. Midsommar is one of those films that everyone is always writing think pieces about, asking who's the real villain. And while it's hotly debated over whether or not the true villain is Christian, Danny, or the Harga cult, I actually think the real villain is, from a certain standpoint, toxic masculinity. Yes, the cult is killing people, which is obviously horrible and bad. But when it comes to Danny's villain arc, where she lets Christian be sacrificed in the end, I don't think she would have done that if he hadn't spent so much of their relationship gaslighting her into believing she was too emotional. Things might have turned out differently if he'd ever taken off the stoic mask and had been vulnerable enough to tell her how he was feeling or how he was emotionally exhausted from being her support system. As for the others, Josh may not have been killed if he hadn't been disregarding the rules of the commune in order to one-up Christian in his never-ending quest to be the smartest and most well-researched person in his group. And maybe a less sex-obsessed Mark would have seen the obvious signs that the woman who lured him away was not going to have sex with him and was instead just going to kill him. There isn't a real human villain amongst this group, because the real villain was toxic masculinity all along. And Pele. You're a real asshole, Pele. Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. It's one that I've wanted to make for a long time. Now, you may be asking to yourself, wasn't this a video about a film while we're in the middle of a WGA strike? Wouldn't that be considered scabbing? And to that I say, no, good faith commenter. You see, Midsommar is made by A24, which is currently not a struck company by SAG or the WGA. Why? Because unlike all the other major production companies, A24 has agreed that they will pay whatever SAG agrees is fair. So, if a small production company like A24 can do it, I wonder why certain large production companies are claiming that what the writers are asking for is just not realistic. Currently, the WGA strike is still going and going strong. There are amazing A-list actors who are donating to the Entertainment Community Fund, which I'm also including a link to down below for those of you who'd like to help the creators who are on strike right now. Also down below, you'll find a link to my Patreon, which you can join if you'd like to support me. I have a lot of available tiers, some as low as $3 per month, with the highest one being $300 per month, which no one has bought yet. Thank God, because that means I don't have to say nice things about Autism Speaks. So there. I just did finger guns. I am such a dork. Also down below, you'll find a link to my merch store in case you'd like to purchase some merchandise. We have shirts like Autistic Bimbo, Autistic Himbo, and Autistic Thembo, because being beautiful and dumb as rocks has no gender. If you don't have the money to support me right now, that's totally okay. You can support me by subscribing to the channel and sharing this video, and also maybe leaving a comment down below, because being kind is always free. So is being a jerk, but it's only free for you. I pay for it in my tiers. But hey, like I said, every comment helps the algorithm, so I would greatly appreciate that, because my editor is trying to buy herself another snake, and I can only pay her if I get paid by YouTube watch rhythm thingy mabobber. So let's help get Flan a sibling, okay? Flan needs a sibling. Maybe comment down below if there's any A24 films you'd like me to discuss, or maybe any books or anime. I like anime. I'm a nerd. Anyways, I hope to see you all in my next video.